The border between Ashenvale and Thornwood had claimed more lives than any war. So when Seren crossed it alone, carrying nothing but a sealed letter and her father's orders, she knew she wasn't expected to survive. She was a peace offering, a sacrifice dressed in silk. Her own pack had sent her to die. Or worse, to be kept as a trophy by the most feared Alpha in the Northern Territories. Alpha Riven of Thornwood, the man they called the Midnight Wolf, whose reign had turned a crumbling pack into an empire. The man who had killed his own brother to take the throne. Seren had prepared herself for imprisonment, for cruelty, for a slow, humiliating death. What she hadn't prepared for was what happened when the clock struck 12. He appeared from the shadows like smoke given form. Pale gray eyes fixed on her with an intensity that stopped her heart. And before his guards could drag her to the dungeons, before her escorts could finish their rehearsed speech about peace offerings, he spoke 3 words that silenced everyone. "She's my mate." The hall erupted, her own pack's envoys went pale, and Seren stood frozen, because she knew, that couldn't possibly be true. So why did he claim her? And why, when his frost-colored gaze met hers, did she see something that looked almost like desperation? The carriage had been traveling for 3 days. Seren pressed her palm against the frosted window, watching the landscape shift from the golden meadows of Ashenvale to the dense, blackened forests of Thornwood territory. The trees here grew so thick that even midday felt like twilight. Their branches clawed at the sky like hands reaching from graves. Fitting, she thought. I'm entering my own burial ground. The velvet seat beneath her had once felt luxurious. Now it felt like a coffin cushion. Every mile carried her further from the only home she'd known and closer to a fate her father had chosen for her without hesitation. Lord Aldrich Vane, Alpha of Ashenvale, had never loved her. That was a truth Seren had accepted long before she could walk. She was the daughter of his wife's affair, a living reminder of betrayal that he'd been forced to raise because killing a pup would have made him look weak. But sending her to die in enemy territory? That was perfectly acceptable. "You should eat something," Coralie said from across the carriage. Her half-sister's voice was soft, almost pitying. Almost? Seren didn't look at her. "I'm not hungry. Father says you'll need your strength. Alpha Riven's court is demanding." "Father isn't here." Seren finally turned, meeting her sister's eyes. Coralie had inherited their father's golden hair, his sharp cheekbones, and his status. Everything Seren had been denied. "And we both know I'm not meant to survive long enough for demands to matter." Coralie's expression flickered, guilt, perhaps, or discomfort. She looked away first. The carriage shuddered as the wheels hit rougher terrain. They were close now. Seren could feel it in her bones, in the way the beast inside her stirred restlessly beneath her skin. Something was different about this land. The air itself felt heavier, charged with an energy she couldn't name. Her wolf, usually quiet to the point of dormancy, suddenly pressed against her consciousness with unusual urgency. Danger, her instincts screamed. But also, and this confused her, home. "That makes no sense," she thought fiercely. "This isn't our home. That man isn't our mate. Whatever you're feeling, it's wrong." The carriage stopped. Serene's pulse spiked as the door swung open, revealing a guard in black leather armor, the silver wolf insignia of Thornwood gleaming on his chest. "Lady Seren Vane," he announced, not quite looking at her. "You will follow me." She stepped down onto frozen ground, her thin slippers immediately soaking through. No one had thought to give her proper boots. Why waste good leather on a sacrifice? Thornwood Keep rose before her, a fortress of black stone and iron spires that seemed to pierce the clouds themselves. Torches flickered along its walls despite the daylight, as if the sun's rays couldn't quite reach this place. The envoys from Ashenvale had already dismounted, 3 advisors her father trusted, none of whom had spoken a kind word to her during the entire journey. "Remember your purpose," the eldest muttered as he passed her. "Smile. Be pleasant. Make him want to keep you long enough for the treaty to be signed." Seren said nothing. She was led through corridors that seemed to wind endlessly, past servants who stared at her with open curiosity, past guards whose hands never strayed far from their weapons. Finally, they reached a great hall. It was nothing like Ashenvale's bright, gilded throne room. Here, everything was shadow and stone. The ceiling vanished into darkness overhead. Candles flickered in iron chandeliers, casting dancing shadows across walls hung with ancient tapestries depicting hunts and wars and wolves devouring their prey. And at the far end, elevated on a dais of black marble, sat an empty throne. "Alpha Riven will receive you at midnight," the guard announced. "You will wait here." "Midnight," one of the Ashenvale advisors sputtered. "That's 12 hours from now. This is an insult to—" "Those are the Alpha's orders." The guard turned and left, taking his men with him. The doors slammed shut with a sound like a tomb ceiling. Coralie touched Seren's arm. "Sister, Don't." Seren pulled away. "You delivered me here. Your duty is done. You can stop pretending now." The hours crawled by. Food was brought. Fine food. Roasted meats and winter vegetables and dark wine. But Seren couldn't eat. She sat in a chair near the cold fireplace, watching shadows move across the walls, trying to prepare herself for what was coming. The Midnight Wolf. She'd heard the stories. Everyone had. Alpha Riven had taken power 5 years ago after his elder brother died in what was officially called a hunting accident, but everyone knew the truth. Riven had challenged him. Riven had won. And then Riven had systematically crushed every rival, every enemy, and every threat to his rule. He was brilliant, ruthless, and utterly without mercy. And now, she thought, he owns me. When the clock began to chime midnight, Seren rose from her chair. The advisors scrambled to their feet, smoothing their robes, adjusting their expressions into masks of diplomacy. The great doors swung open, and Seren felt her wolf surge forward with such force that she nearly staggered. He walked in like darkness given form. Tall. Taller than any man she'd seen. With hair as black as the void between stars and eyes that gleamed like winter storms in the candlelight. His features were sharp, almost cruel in their beauty, and when his gaze swept the room, every person in it held their breath. But it was his scent that undid her. Winter forests and wood smoke and something deeper, something that called to her blood in ways she couldn't explain. His eyes found hers across the hall and stopped. For one endless moment, he simply stared at her. A flicker crossed his features. Shock, perhaps, or recognition, though they had never met. Then, before anyone could speak, before the advisors could begin their rehearsed greeting, Alpha Riven of Thornwood spoke 3 words that shattered everything. "She's my mate." The silence that followed was absolute. Seren stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what she'd just heard. Mate. He'd called her his mate, but that was impossible. She would have felt it, wouldn't she? The bond, the pull, the undeniable recognition that wolves spoke of in hushed, reverent tones. All she felt was fear. And beneath the fear, something else. Something the beast inside her was howling about that she refused to examine. "Your Majesty," the eldest Ashenvale advisor stammered, "there must be some mistake." Lady Seren was sent as a peace offering, a gesture of goodwill from Alpha Vane. "She's not... that is... she can't be... Can't be what?" Riven's voice was low, soft, and somehow more terrifying than any shout. He hadn't moved from the doorway, but his presence filled the entire hall. "My mate? She's a bastard," another advisor blurted. "Born of an affair. Hardly worthy of—" Riven's gaze shifted to the man, and whatever he saw there made the advisor's words die in his throat. "You dare," Riven said quietly, "tell me who is worthy of me?" The advisor dropped to his knees. "Forgive me, Alpha, I meant no offense." Riven ignored him. His attention returned to Seren, and she felt the weight of it like a physical force pressing against her chest. "Come here," he said. It wasn't a request. Seren's legs moved before her mind could object. She crossed the stone floor one step at a time, hyper-aware of every sound. The rustle of her dress, the blood rushing in her ears, the shallow breathing of the terrified envoys behind her. She stopped 3 feet from him. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. The candlelight carved shadows beneath his cheekbones made his pale metallic stare gleam like molten silver. A thin scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, the only imperfection on an otherwise devastating face. He smelled like winter itself, cold and sharp and somehow intoxicating. "Look at me," he commanded. Seren raised her chin, meeting his gaze despite every instinct screaming at her to submit, to look away, to bare her throat and beg for mercy. The mask slipped, just for a moment. Surprise flickered across his features, or approval. "You don't cower," he observed. "Would it help if I did?" The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "No." He circled her slowly, and Seren forced herself to remain still. She could feel his gaze traveling over her. Her tangled dark hair, her too thin frame, the threadbare silk dress her father had deemed sufficient for a sacrifice. "They dressed you like a beggar," Riven said quietly from behind her. "I wasn't meant to impress," Seren replied. "I was meant to die." She heard his footsteps stop. "Is that what Aldrich Vane told you?" His voice was closer now, almost at her ear. "That you were coming here to die?" "He didn't need to tell me. Everyone knows what happens to peace offerings in Thornwood. And yet you came anyway." Seren laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. "I wasn't given a choice." Riven appeared before her again, and this time his expression had shifted. The cold amusement was gone, replaced by something harder to read. He studied her face like he was searching for something, answers to questions she didn't know he was asking. "You will stay here," he said finally, "in Thornwood Keep, as my mate." The hall erupted. "Alpha Riven, the treaty," an advisor began, "is irrelevant now." Riven didn't look away from Seren. "I've claimed her. She belongs to Thornwood. If Aldrich Vane has objections, he can bring them to me personally. I welcome the opportunity to discuss them." The threat was unmistakable. Seren's mind raced. This didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Why would the most powerful alpha in the North claim a bastard nobody as his mate? She wasn't beautiful. She wasn't powerful. She had nothing to offer him politically. Unless— "You're lying," she said softly, too quietly for the others to hear. "I'm not your mate. I would feel it if I were." Riven's scent changed almost imperceptibly. Acknowledgement, perhaps, that she'd seen through him. "Would you?" he murmured. "Have you ever felt a mate bond before? Do you know what it's supposed to feel like?" She hesitated. "No, but—" "Then how do you know what you're not feeling?" It was a dodge. An elegant one, but still a dodge. He hadn't denied her accusation. "Why?" Seren pressed. "Why claim me? What do you actually want?" For a long moment, Riven simply looked at her. Then, so quietly that even her wolf ears barely caught it, he answered, "That little wolf is something you'll have to earn the right to know." He turned to address the room. "Lady Seren will be given chambers in the East Wing. She will be treated as my future queen. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me, and I trust I don't need to explain what happens to those who disrespect me." The silence was answer enough. "The Ashenvale envoys may leave at dawn," Riven continued. "Inform Alpha Vane that his gift has been accepted. The treaty negotiations will proceed as planned, though the terms will need to be adjusted given this development. The eldest advisor opened his mouth to protest, then thought better of it. Coralie stepped forward, her face pale. Alpha Riven, please. Seren is my sister. Surely I can stay with her while she adjusts. No. Riven's tone brooked no argument. You'll leave with the others. But, Coralie. Seren's voice was steady, though her hands trembled at her sides. Go home. Tell father what happened. I'll be fine. She wasn't sure that was true. She wasn't sure of anything anymore. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever game Riven was playing, she was now a piece on his board, and she needed to figure out the rules before they got her killed. Guards appeared to escort her to her chambers. As Seren followed them from the hall, she glanced back one last time. Riven was watching her go, his winter storm eyes tracking her every movement. And in that gaze, beneath the ice, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Hunger. The chambers they gave her were nothing like she'd expected. Seren had prepared herself for a dungeon cell, or at best, a servant's quarters tucked away in some forgotten corner of the keep. Instead, she found herself standing in a suite larger than her entire living space in Ashenvale. 3 rooms connected by arched doorways, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. A fire crackled in a massive stone hearth, casting dancing light across furniture that looked older than some kingdoms. The bed was enormous, draped in furs and deep blue velvet, and the windows, actual windows, tall enough that she could have walked through them, looked out over the moonlit forest below. These were the previous queen's chambers, the maid who'd escorted her said quietly. Alpha Riven's mother lived here before she passed. Seren turned to look at the woman, middle-aged, with kind eyes and rough hands that spoke of hard work. His mother's chambers? Why would he put me here? The maid hesitated. I couldn't say, my lady, but the Alpha's orders were very specific. You're to have everything you need. Clothes, food, books, whatever you desire. You're to be treated as the future Luna of Thornwood. Luna. The word felt foreign on Seren's tongue when she repeated it silently. Luna of Thornwood. Mate of the Midnight Wolf. None of this was real. What's your name? Seren asked. The maid blinked, clearly surprised by the question. Maren, my lady. Marin? Seren nodded. Thank you for bringing me here. You can go now. Are you certain you don't need anything? A bath, perhaps? Food? Seren shook her head. What she needed was time to think, and she couldn't do that with an audience. Once Marin left, Seren moved to the window. The moon hung low and full over the forest, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. In the distance, she could see wolves running through the trees, Thornwood pack members on patrol perhaps, or simply enjoying the freedom of the night. Something primal rose within her, that same strange urgency she'd felt since crossing the border. What is wrong with you? Seren thought fiercely. This isn't our home. That man isn't our mate. Whatever you're feeling, it's wrong. But her wolf didn't listen. If anything, the feeling grew stronger. A pull in her chest. An ache that had no source she could identify. A knock at the door made her spin around. Enter, she called, expecting Marin again. But it wasn't the maid who stepped through the doorway. It was Riven. He'd changed from his formal clothes into something simpler. A black shirt, unlaced at the throat, and dark trousers tucked into worn leather boots. Without the ceremonial armor and the weight of the court watching, he looked younger. Almost human. Almost. You should be sleeping, he said, closing the door behind him. So should you. Seren didn't move from her position by the window. Distance felt important right now. Did you come to explain why you lied about me being your mate? Riven crossed to the fireplace, his movements fluid and predatory. He stood with his back to the flames, and the light behind him made it impossible to read his expression. "I didn't lie," he said. "Then you're delusional." "Possibly, but not about this." He tilted his head, studying her. "You felt it when I walked into the hall. Your wolf recognized something. I could see it in your eyes." Serene's breath caught in her throat. "I felt fear, that's all." "Liar." The word was soft, almost gentle, but it struck her like a blow. Because he was right. She had felt something beyond fear, something that terrified her far more than the prospect of death. "Even if there was something," Seren said carefully, "that doesn't make us mates. Recognition can be wrong. Bonds can be fabricated." "They can," Riven agreed, "but ours isn't fabricated." He moved toward her, each step slow and deliberate, giving her time to retreat. She didn't. Pride wouldn't let her. He stopped close enough that she could feel the chill radiating from his body. Not warmth, like she'd expect from a wolf. Cold. Winter touched. "What are you?" she whispered before she could stop herself. Riven's expression flickered. There and gone so fast she almost missed it. "That's a complicated question." "Then give me a complicated answer." "Not tonight." He reached up, and Seren flinched, but he only tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were ice against her skin. He paused, something shifting in his scent. "You're warm," he murmured, almost to himself. "I'd forgotten what warmth felt like." Before she could respond, he withdrew his hand. "Tonight, you need to rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what happens next." "And what does happen next?" "That depends on you." His gray gaze held hers. "I'm going to make you an offer, Seren. One that will benefit us both. You'll have time to consider it, and you're free to refuse. But I want you to understand something first." "What?" He leaned closer, his breath cold against her cheek. "Your father didn't send you here as a peace offering. He sent you here to die. Not quickly, but slowly. Publicly. He expected me to use you as an example of what happens to Ashenvale's enemies." Seren swallowed. "I know. Do you?" Riven pulled back, his gaze searching her face. "Do you know that he's been planning this for years? That the treaty he proposed was designed to fail, specifically so he could blame Thornwood for your death and justify the war he's been wanting to start?" The words hit her like a physical blow. That can't be true." "Your father has been positioning troops along the border for 6 months. He's made alliances with 3 other packs, all of them sworn enemies of Thornwood. And he's been telling anyone who will listen that I've been making threats against his family. Against you, specifically." Seren's legs felt weak. She reached for the windowsill to steady herself. "You're saying I'm not just a sacrifice," she said slowly. "I'm a declaration of war." "Yes." Riven's voice softened slightly. "And the moment news of your death reaches Ashenvale, 3 armies will march on my territory." "Then why claim me as your mate?" Seren demanded. "Why not just send me back and expose his plans?" "Because sending you back would accomplish nothing. Your father would simply kill you himself and blame me anyway." Riven's jaw tightened. "And because you're more valuable to me alive than dead." There it was. The truth beneath the mate bond performance. "What do you want from me?" Seren asked. "And this time, give me a real answer." Riven was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "There's something in your blood, Seren. Something you don't know about. Something your father has been hiding from you your entire life." He held her gaze. "Something that could save my life. Or end it." Before she could ask what he meant, he turned and walked to the door. "Rest," he said. "Tomorrow I'll tell you everything." The door closed behind him, and Seren was left alone with more questions than answers. and a creeping suspicion that whatever secret she carried, it was about to change everything. Seren didn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed, surrounded by furs that smelled of cedar and frost, staring at the canopy above her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Riven's winter storm gaze. Every time she began to drift off, his words echoed through her mind. Something in your blood. What could that possibly mean? She was nobody. A bastard daughter, unwanted and unloved, with a wolf so weak that she'd never even managed a full shift. Her father had called her defective, a mistake that should have been drowned at birth. And yet, the most powerful alpha in the North was claiming she could save his life, or end it. Dawn crept through the windows, pale and reluctant, as if even the sun was afraid to fully enter Thornwood territory. Seren rose from the bed, her body aching from tension she hadn't been able to release. A soft knock announced Marin's arrival. The maid entered carrying an armful of clothing, real clothing, not the threadbare silk she'd arrived in. "The Alpha requested that you be dressed appropriately for breakfast," Marin said, laying the garments across a chair. "He'll receive you in his private dining room in 1 hour." Seren touched the fabric. Deep blue wool, soft as clouds, embroidered with silver thread at the cuffs and collar. There was a fur-lined cloak as well, and boots made of supple leather that looked like they'd actually fit her feet. "These are too fine," she murmured. "I'm not—" "You're the Alpha's chosen mate," Marin interrupted gently. "You're exactly who these clothes were made for." Seren wanted to argue, but she was tired of being cold, tired of looking like the unwanted thing she'd always been told she was. So she let Marin help her dress. Let her brush and braid her dark hair. Let her transform from a shivering sacrifice into something that almost resembled a lady. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "Beautiful," Marin said softly. Seren looked away. She didn't know what to do with compliments. The private dining room was smaller than she'd expected. Intimate, even. A table set for two stood near a roaring fire, laden with more food than Seren had seen in months. Fresh bread, honey, cured meats, winter fruits preserved in sugar and spice. Riven was already seated, but he rose when she entered. The gesture caught her off guard. Alphas didn't stand for anyone. "You look rested," he said. "I'm not." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Honesty, that's rare around here." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Eat. You're too thin." "Is that an observation or a criticism?" "Neither. It's a concern." Seren sat, uncertain how to respond to that. Concern was not something she'd experienced often. They ate in silence for several minutes. Or rather, Seren ate while Riven watched her with those unreadable frost-colored eyes. The food was extraordinary. Rich and warming and better than anything she'd tasted in her life. She tried not to show how desperately hungry she was, but suspected she failed. "When did you last have a proper meal?" Riven asked quietly. "Define proper." His jaw tightened. "Aldrich Vane will answer for many things before this is over." Seren set down her fork. "You keep speaking as if you're going to war with my father. But you also said you want to avoid war." "I want to avoid unnecessary death," Riven corrected. "That's not the same thing. Your father has been preparing for this conflict for years. He wants Thornwood destroyed. He won't stop until he achieves that or dies trying." "Then why not just kill him now?" "You have the power." "Because killing him without cause would make me the villain he's painted me as. Every pack from here to the southern seas would unite against me." Riven leaned back in his chair. "But if I can prove what he's done, if I can show the other alphas his treachery, his allies will abandon him. And then, when I do kill him, it will be justice, not aggression." Seren absorbed this. It was ruthlessly logical, coldly strategic, And it told her something important about the man sitting across from her. He wasn't a mindless monster. He was something far more dangerous. He was patient. "You said you'd tell me everything today," she reminded him. "About what's in my blood. About why you really claimed me." Riven studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Walk with me." He led her through the keep and out into the courtyard. The cold hit her immediately, sharp and biting, but the fur-lined cloak kept the worst of it at bay. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they walked toward the edge of the forest. "What do you know about your mother?" Riven asked suddenly. Saren blinked. "My mother? She died when I was born. My father's wife, I mean. The woman who raised me." "I'm not asking about Lady Vane. I'm asking about your real mother. The woman Aldrich had his affair with." The question made Saren's chest tighten. "I don't know anything. No one would tell me. Father said she was a servant, a nobody. He said he killed her himself after I was born." Riven stopped walking. "Your mother," he said slowly, "was not a servant. And she wasn't a nobody." He turned to face her, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. "Your mother was Lysara Thorne, the last living daughter of the Blood Moon line." Saren's world tilted. That's impossible. The Blood Moon wolves died out centuries ago." "That's what everyone believes. That's what they were meant to believe." Riven's voice dropped lower. "But Lysara survived. She hid among common wolves for decades, and when your father seduced her, or perhaps trapped her, I've never been certain which, she became pregnant with you." Saren shook her head. Even if that were true, what would it matter? The Blood Moon wolves were just another pack. Just another bloodline. No. Riven stepped closer. The Blood Moon wolves were healers. Their blood carried power. The ability to break any curse, to mend any wound, to purify any corruption. His pale eyes burned into hers. "But there's another side to that power. Blood Moon healing can cure any curse. But in the wrong hands, if extracted forcibly or given unwillingly, it becomes something else. A catalyst. An accelerant. Your father has been experimenting with ways to corrupt that power." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Including using it against the curse that has been slowly killing me since the day I took the throne." The world had stopped making sense. Saren stared at Riven, trying to process what he'd just told her. Blood Moon wolves. Healing blood. A curse killing him. Corrupted power. "You're dying?" she breathed. Riven's expression didn't change, but his scent shifted. A crack in that perfect control, letting something raw and painful bleed through. Not immediately, but yes, eventually. He turned away, looking out at the forest. "When I killed my brother to take the throne, I didn't know it would trigger the curse. Our family has ruled Thornwood for 8 generations, and for 8 generations, power has passed peacefully from father to son. But my brother had no sons, and when I challenged him, when I ended his life to save this pack from his incompetence and cruelty." He paused. "The old magic saw it as betrayal. It's been eating me alive ever since." "That's why you're so cold," Saren realized. "You feel like winter incarnate. I thought it was just your nature, but it's not. It's the death sentence you carry." "Yes." Riven's voice was flat. "Ice in my veins. Frost in my heart. Every year it spreads a little further. Every year I feel a little less." He laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. "I'm told that by next winter I won't feel anything at all. And shortly after that, my heart will simply stop." Saren's throat tightened. She should feel nothing for this man, this stranger who had manipulated her, who was clearly using her for his own purposes. But the raw pain beneath his words was impossible to ignore. "My blood can stop this?" she asked. "In theory." Riven's gaze found hers again, those winter-gray depths holding steady. Blood moon healing requires more than just contact with your blood. It requires willingness, a bond. The magic only works if freely given, freely received. That's why I can't simply take what I need from you. Understanding dawned. That's why you claimed me as your mate. Not because we actually are mates, but because you need to form a bond strong enough for the healing to work. Partially true. Riven's gaze held hers. I claimed you because I recognized something in you the moment you entered that hall. Your wolf called to mine. The bond is real, Seren. It's just incomplete. Incomplete how? You haven't accepted it. He stepped closer, and she felt that pull again. The one the beast inside her had been howling about since she crossed the border. Your wolf knows what I am to you, but your mind resists. Your heart has been hurt too many times to trust easily. Seren's hands trembled. Can you blame me? Everyone I've ever trusted has betrayed me or abandoned me. No, Riven said, his voice low. I don't blame you at all. Which is why I'm not going to force anything. The choice is yours, Seren. Stay here. Give me a chance to prove myself worthy of your trust, and perhaps save my life in the process. Or leave. Return to Ashenvale. Face whatever your father has planned for you. I won't stop you. You'd let me go? Even though you need me to survive? I won't build my survival on another person's suffering. His voice was firm. I've done many terrible things in my life, but I won't do that. Seren searched his face for deception, for the hidden catch she was certain existed, but she found nothing except weary honesty. Why should I believe you? She asked. You shouldn't. Not yet. Trust is earned. He held out his hand. But I'm asking for the chance to earn it. She stared at his outstretched palm. The chill radiated from him even across the distance between them. Her wolf was practically screaming at her to take his hand, to accept what he was offering. But her wolf had no experience with treachery. Her wolf didn't understand the 1,000 ways people could hurt you while smiling at your face. I need time, Seren said. Riven's hand dropped, but he didn't look disappointed. If anything, he looked relieved. Take all the time you need. They walked back to the keep in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before, less hostile, more thoughtful. When they reached her chambers, Riven paused at the door. There's something else you should know, he said quietly, about why your father really sent you here, about what he's planning. Tell me. Not now. Tonight. His eyes held hers. After dark, come to the North Tower. There's something I need to show you. Something that will help you understand what we're facing. But be careful. Not everyone in this keep is loyal to me. There are spies, agents working for your father. If they discover what I'm about to show you... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Tonight, Seren agreed. Riven nodded once, then turned and walked away. Seren watched him go, her mind churning with everything she'd learned. Blood moon heritage, a dying alpha, a father plotting war. And at the center of it all, her. The bastard nobody. Suddenly the most important person in 2 territories. She almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Almost. The hours until nightfall stretched like years. Seren tried to distract herself. She explored her chambers more thoroughly, finding a small library of books in an alcove she'd missed the night before. She read, without absorbing a single word. She ate the lunch Marin brought without tasting it. All she could think about was the North Tower. What Riven wanted to show her? What secrets waited in the darkness? And beneath all of that, a quieter thought. The memory of his hand, extended toward her. The hope in his eyes when he'd asked for a chance. Why do I care? She thought furiously. He's using me. This is all a transaction. But her wolf disagreed. Her inner wolf had been purring contentedly ever since their walk in the forest, as if proximity to Riven had soothed something that had been agitated for years. "He's our mate," her wolf insisted. "Stop fighting it." "He might be a monster," Saren argued back. "He killed his own brother. To save his pack. To protect his people. Would you not do the same?" The question disturbed her because she didn't know the answer. When darkness finally fell, Saren slipped from her chambers. The corridors were quieter now, most of the servants having retired for the evening. Torches flickered in iron sconces, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for her as she passed. She found the North Tower after several wrong turns. The staircase spiraled upward into darkness, and she climbed it with her pulse racing louder with each step. At the top, a heavy door stood slightly ajar. Candlelight spilled through the gap. Seren pushed it open. The room beyond was circular, lined with windows that looked out over the entire territory. Maps covered every surface. Maps of Thornwood, of Ashenvale, of territories she didn't recognize. And in the center, bent over a table covered in documents, stood Riven. He looked up when she entered. "You came. You doubted I would?" "I wondered." He straightened, gesturing for her to approach. "Come, see what your father has been doing while you were locked away in your tower." Seren moved to the table. The documents were letters, dozens of them, all bearing her father's seal. She picked one up and began to read. Her blood ran cold. "These are troop movements," she said slowly. "Alliance agreements, attack coordinates." "Your father has been planning this war for 3 years," Riven confirmed. "He's made deals with the Ashford Pact to the east, the Blackwater Pact to the south, and most troublingly, the Crimson Claw Pact across the mountains." "Crimson Claw?" Seren looked up sharply. "They're slavers, butchers. Even my father wouldn't—" "He would. He has." Riven pulled out another document. "In exchange for their military support, he's promised them something very specific." Seren took the paper with trembling hands. The words blurred before her eyes, but their meaning was clear. "Upon successful conquest of Thornwood territory, all surviving pack members shall be delivered to Crimson Claw representatives for processing and distribution." "He's going to sell your people into slavery," she whispered. "Every last one." Riven's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. "Men, women, children. Anyone who survives the initial assault will be shipped across the mountains and sold like cattle." Seren's legs gave out. She sank into a nearby chair, the document still clutched in her hands. Her father was evil. She'd always known that in a vague, personal way. The cruelty he'd shown her, the hatred in his eyes. But this was something else entirely. This was monstrous on a scale she couldn't comprehend. "How did you get these?" she asked. "I have spies, too." Riven moved to stand beside her. "It's taken me years to piece together his plans, and even now I don't have enough proof to convince the neutral packs. Your father is too careful. The letters I have are damning, but they're not quite damning enough. His allies could claim they were forged." Among the letters, one caught her eye, unsigned, written in a hand she almost recognized, warning Riven about Aldrich's plans. Someone inside Ashenvale was already feeding him information. "What would be damning enough?" she asked, setting the unsigned letter aside. Riven was quiet for a moment. "A witness. Someone from inside his inner circle. Someone who could testify to what they've seen and heard." Seren understood immediately. "You want me to be that witness?" "I want you to consider it." He knelt beside her chair, bringing his face level with hers. "You lived in that house for 18 years. You must have seen things, heard things, even if you didn't understand their significance at the time." She had. She'd overheard late-night conversations that stopped the moment she entered a room. She'd seen messengers arriving under cover of darkness, their cloaks bearing symbols she didn't recognize. She'd noticed her father's moods shifting, the barely contained excitement before trips he never explained. "I might know things," she admitted, "but I was kept isolated. My father made sure I never had access to anything important." "That you're aware of?" Riven's eyes searched hers. "Think, Seren. Think about everything you saw, everything you heard. Somewhere in your memories is the key to stopping this war before it starts." Her mind raced through 18 years of painful recollections, the locked rooms she'd never been allowed to enter, the servants who disappeared without explanation, the screams she'd sometimes heard from the basement that everyone pretended not to notice. The basement. "There's a vault," she said suddenly, "beneath the main house. My father goes there almost every night. No one else is ever allowed inside." Riven went very still. "Do you know what's in it?" "No, but I know it's important. He guards it more carefully than anything else." She met his gaze. If there's proof of his plans anywhere, it would be there. Something shifted in Riven's expression. Hope, perhaps, or determination. "Then we need to get inside that vault." "How?" "Even if we could get to Ashenvale undetected, I don't know how to open it. Only my father has the key." Riven smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "Then we'll have to get creative." He stood, offering her his hand again. This time, she took it. His skin was cold, so cold, but his grip was strong. And when he pulled her to her feet, bringing them close enough that she could feel his breath against her hair, Seren felt her wolf surge with something that might have been joy. "Partners?" Riven asked softly. Seren looked up at him, this complicated, dangerous, dying man who was asking for her help, who needed her in a way no one had ever needed her before. "Partners," she agreed. And somewhere deep inside her, a wall she'd built long ago began to crack. The days that followed blurred together in a way Seren had never experienced. She and Riven spent hours in the North Tower, poring over maps and documents, planning their approach to Ashen Vale. He was meticulous in his strategy, considering every possible complication, every potential failure point. But it was the time between planning sessions that surprised her most. He began joining her for meals, not just breakfast, but lunch and dinner too. They talked about everything except the mission. He told her about growing up in Thornwood, about his mother who'd died when he was young, about the brother he'd loved before duty forced him to become an enemy. "Kaelin wasn't always cruel," Riven said one evening, staring into the fire. "When we were young, he protected me, taught me to hunt, to fight, to read the forest like a book. But something changed when Father named him heir. The pressure, perhaps. Or maybe the darkness was always there, and power simply revealed it." "What did he do?" Seren asked softly. Riven was quiet for a long moment. "He started with the servants. Small cruelties at first. Beatings for minor infractions, withholding food for imagined slights. Then it escalated. Disappearances. Unmarked graves in the forest." His jaw tightened. "By the time I challenged him, 17 wolves had died by his hand, 17 innocent lives, ended because he enjoyed their suffering." "You saved your pack," Seren said. "I murdered my brother." Riven's voice was flat. "The old magic doesn't care about motivation. It only cares about blood." Seren reached across the space between them and placed her hand over his. His skin was winter-touched, always so cold. But he didn't pull away. "You did what you had to do," she said. "That's not murder. That's justice." He looked at her then, something raw and unguarded in his pale eyes. "You truly believe that?" "Yes." For a moment neither of them moved. Then Riven turned his hand beneath hers, interlacing their fingers. "You're unlike anyone I've ever known," he murmured. Serene's chest tightened. "I'm nobody special." "You're wrong." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You're extraordinary. You just haven't realized it yet." That night, Seren lay awake, replaying his words. Her wolf was practically vibrating with contentment, and for the first time, she didn't try to silence it. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe. The evenings grew longer, their conversations deeper. She learned that he loved poetry but hated music, that he'd once tried to befriend a hawk and had the scars to prove it, that he missed his mother every single day and sometimes talked to her portrait when he thought no one was watching. And he learned about her loneliness, her dreams, the way she'd taught herself to read by stealing books from her father's library. 2 weeks passed before they were ready for the mission. Riven had secured a small team of his most trusted wolves, warriors who'd been with him since before his ascension, who'd proven their loyalty 100 times over. They would enter Ashenvale territory under cover of darkness, approach the main house through the servant passages Seren remembered from her childhood, and locate the vault. "The hardest part will be opening it," Riven said as they made final preparations. "Without the key?" "I've been thinking about that." Seren pulled something from her pocket, a small iron pendant shaped like a wolf's head. "Lady Vane, my father's wife, found this hidden in his study when I was young. She gave it to me secretly, told me it belonged to my real mother, that it was the only thing that survived. I never understood why father hadn't destroyed it." Riven took the pendant, examining it closely. His eyes widened. "This is Blood Moon craftsmanship," he said. "The metalwork, the symbols. This isn't just jewelry, it's a key." "A key to what?" "I don't know. But Blood Moon wolves were known for creating locks that only their blood could open." He looked at her with new intensity. "Your father may not have realized what he was letting you keep. Or perhaps he hoped you'd never discover its purpose." Seren took the pendant back, feeling its weight differently now. "You think this could open the vault?" "There's only one way to find out." They left at midnight. The journey to Ashenvale took 3 days through back routes and hidden paths. Seren guided them around the patrol schedules she'd memorized as a child, through gaps in the border defenses she'd discovered during lonely wanderings. When the main house finally came into view, that cold, imposing structure where she'd spent 18 miserable years, she felt her stomach clench. "We don't have to do this," Riven said quietly beside her. "We can find another way." "There is no other way." Seren squared her shoulders. "And I need to do this. I need to see what he's been hiding." They entered through the wine cellar, a route she'd used countless times to escape her father's rages. The house was quiet, most of the servants asleep, the guards positioned at exterior posts. The vault was exactly where she remembered. A heavy iron door set into the basement wall, covered with symbols she now recognized as Blood Moon script. Seren pressed her pendant against the central symbol. Nothing happened. "Blood," Riven murmured. "It needs your blood." Seren drew a small knife and cut her palm, pressing the wound against the pendant as she held it to the door. The symbols flared with golden light. Something clicked deep within the mechanism, and the door swung open. The vault was larger than Seren had imagined. Shelves lined every wall, stacked with boxes, documents, artifacts. But it was the far wall that drew her attention, covered entirely by a massive tapestry depicting wolves beneath a blood-red moon. "Blood Moon heraldry," Riven breathed. Seren moved closer, her pulse racing. Behind the tapestry, she found a smaller chamber, hidden from casual view, and inside that chamber, "Gods above," she whispered. Bones, human bones, arranged in careful patterns on stone shelves. Dozens of them. Skulls staring with empty eyes, rib cages gleaming in the torchlight. "These are Blood Moon wolves," Riven said, his voice tight. "Your father didn't just kill your mother. He's been hunting them for decades, collecting them." Seren's legs trembled. "Why? Why would he do this?" Riven was examining the documents stacked on a nearby table. His face went pale, paler than usual, which was saying something. Because of this. He held up a leather-bound journal. These are your father's records. He's been experimenting with Blood Moon blood, trying to extract its power, to weaponize it. He flipped through the pages, his expression growing grimmer with each turn. He's created something, a poison that specifically targets wolves with curse bonds. One drop, and what? Riven looked at her. And the frost accelerates 1,000-fold. Death within hours instead of years. The implications crashed over Seren like a wave. He knows about your curse. He's known for years. Riven's voice was hollow. This was never about territory or power. This was about destroying me specifically. The war, the alliances, the slavery deals. They're all contingencies. His primary plan is much simpler. He's going to poison you. He's going to have you poison me. Riven set down the journal. That's why he sent you. That's why he let you keep the pendant. He knew I'd claim you. Everyone knows Blood Moon blood calls to cursed wolves. He was counting on me bringing you close. Seren's world collapsed. No, she breathed. No, I would never. I know. Riven's voice was gentle despite everything. I've known since the beginning that you weren't part of his plan. Not willingly. But there's something else you need to understand. He pulled another document from the pile. A letter, sealed with her father's mark. This was to be delivered to his allies after my death. Read it. Seren took the letter with numb fingers. The words swam before her eyes, but their meaning was clear. My daughter performed admirably. The cursed king trusted her completely, never suspecting that the very blood he sought to save himself would be his undoing. With his death, I claim Thornwood by right of conquest, and reward my faithful child with the status she was always denied. He was going to make me take the blame, Seren whispered. He was going to use me as his weapon and then reward me publicly, so everyone would believe I'd done it deliberately. Yes. Riven stepped closer. But you're not his weapon, Seren. You never were. How can you be so certain? Tears burned in her eyes. How can you trust me after seeing all this? Riven cupped her face in his ice-cold hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. Because I know you. Because I've watched you these past weeks. Your kindness, your courage, your stubborn refusal to be what others expect you to be. Your father made you into a tool, but you've chosen to be something else entirely. What have I chosen to be? His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. Mine, he said softly, if you'll have me. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Serene's wolf howled with joy. And for once, her mind didn't argue. Yes, she breathed. Riven's eyes flared with something that looked almost like relief. He leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. Seren, he murmured. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said days ago. What? I love you. His voice broke on the words, rough and raw, as if they'd been torn from somewhere deep inside him. I know I said I needed you for your blood, for your healing power. And that's true. But somewhere along the way, you became more than that. You became everything. Seren's heart soared. Riven, She never finished the sentence. His body went rigid. His eyes widened with sudden pain. And then he collapsed, his full weight crashing against her as his legs gave out. Riven. She caught him, lowering him to the ground. His skin was colder than ever, ice forming on his lips and eyelashes. What's happening? Riven. The curse, he gasped. When I admitted, horror dawned. Admitting love accelerates it, just like the poison would have. Yes. His voice was fading. I knew the risk. I said it anyway. You deserve to know. Seren's tears fell freely now, landing on his frozen cheeks. You stupid, Wonderful, impossible man. Why would you do that? Because some things? He struggled to speak, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Some things are worth dying for. His eyes fluttered closed. No. Seren shook him, but he didn't respond. No, 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 you don't get to die. Not now. Not like this. But his chest was barely moving. His heartbeat was slowing, and the frost was spreading, crawling up his neck toward his face. She was losing him. Serene's mind raced through everything she knew about blood moon healing. It requires willingness, a bond. The magic only works if freely given, freely received. They had a bond. They had willingness. So why wasn't she healing him already? She pressed her cut palm against his chest, willing her blood into him, begging the magic to work. Golden light flickered beneath her hand. But it wasn't enough. The ice continued spreading. Think, she commanded herself. What's missing? Freely given, freely received. She was giving freely. But was he receiving? He was unconscious, his mind unreachable. The bond between them was incomplete. They'd never finished the claiming, never spoken the full vows. And there was something else. Something she'd been hiding. I have to tell you something, she whispered to his still form. Something I've never told anyone. Her voice shook as she continued. You called me extraordinary. You said I was unlike anyone you'd known. But that's not true. I'm broken, Riven. I've been broken my whole life. She took his cold hand, pressing it against her chest where her wolf lived. My wolf never fully formed. I've never completed a shift. My father called me defective, and he was right. I'm half a creature, half a person. I've spent my entire life pretending to be whole while knowing I never would be. Tears streamed down her face. I was so afraid to tell you, so afraid you'd see me the way everyone else does, as something incomplete, something worthless. But I can't let you die without knowing the truth. I can't let you die thinking I'm something I'm not. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. I love you, she said softly. All of me loves all of you, even the broken parts, especially the broken parts. Light exploded between them, not the faint golden flicker from before. This was blinding, brilliant, warmth and power and something ancient waking after centuries of sleep. Seren felt her wolf surge forward with a force she'd never experienced. Her bones shifted, her skin stretched, and suddenly, impossibly, she was changing. For the first time in her life, she was shifting. The transformation was agony and ecstasy combined. Her bones cracked and reformed, her skin stretched and split and healed in the same instant. Fire raced through her veins, not painful fire, but purifying, burning away everything weak and broken and leaving something powerful in its place. When it was complete, she stood on 4 legs, her paws firm against the cold stone, her senses exploding with a clarity she'd never known. Her fur was the color of moonlit silver, and she could feel power thrumming through every muscle. And beneath her paw, Riven's eyes were opening. Seren? His voice was hoarse, confused. What? She shifted back, the transition smoother than she'd ever imagined it could be. Naked and shaking, she collapsed against him, feeling warmth, actual warmth, radiating from his skin. Your curse, she gasped. Is it gone? He sat up slowly, touching his chest as if he couldn't believe it. I can feel it. The ice is gone. All of it. But how? I didn't do anything except you gave me everything. His eyes were wet. The first emotion she'd ever seen crack through his control. Your truth, your shame, your love. You held nothing back. And you received it? How could I not? He pulled her against him, his now warm arms wrapping around her. How could I not receive everything you are when everything you are is perfect? Seren laughed through her tears. I just told you I'm broken. No. He pulled back, cupping her face in hands that no longer felt like ice. You told me you thought you were broken. There's a difference. You were never incomplete, Seren. You were waiting. Waiting for someone who could see you clearly. Waiting for a reason to become whole. She kissed him then. Their first real kiss. Warm and desperate and full of everything they'd been holding back. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers traced the planes of his face. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, reality came crashing back. We're still in my father's vault, Seren said. Yes. Riven's expression hardened. And we have proof of everything he's done. It's time to end this. He helped her dress in clothes they found in a storage chest. Guard uniforms, ironically. Then they gathered every document, every piece of evidence that would damn Aldrich Vane in the eyes of the Wolf Councils. But as they turned to leave, a slow clap echoed from the doorway. Touching, her father's voice said. Truly touching. Aldrich Vane stood in the vault entrance, flanked by a dozen armed guards. His face was twisted with cold amusement, but his eyes burned with undisguised hatred. I have to admit, he said, stepping forward, I didn't expect you to figure it out quite so thoroughly. I assumed you'd drink the poisoned wine I left in your chambers like a good little tool. Instead, you've been playing detective. Seren's blood ran cold. Poisoned wine? A backup plan. The wine was laced with a catalyst. Once in your bloodstream, it would have corrupted your healing blood into pure poison. One touch from you, one attempt to heal him, and the cursed king would have been dead within hours, in case the curse didn't accelerate fast enough on its own. Aldrich's gaze shifted to Riven. You were supposed to be dead by now, Thornwood. How disappointing. Riven positioned himself slightly in front of Seren. Your plans have failed, Vane. We have everything. The letters, the journals, the alliance documents. Every council in the territory will know what you've done by week's end. Will they? Aldrich smiled. That assumes you leave this vault alive. Which you won't. The guards raised their weapons. Father, stop this. Seren's voice rang through the chamber. It's over. Whatever you hope to accomplish. You don't call me father. Aldrich's voice cracked like a whip. You've never been my daughter. You were a stain, a mistake, a reminder of every way I've been wronged. But I found a use for you. I bred you like livestock, kept you weak and desperate, and molded you into the perfect weapon. I was never your weapon. No. Something dark flickered in Aldrich's eyes. You were supposed to be, but you've always been a disappointment. He raised his hand, and the guards surged forward. Riven moved faster than Seren could follow. One moment he was beside her. The next, he was among the guards, a blade appearing in his hand as if from nowhere. Two men fell before the others could react. But there were too many. Even at full strength, even with the curse lifted, Riven was only one wolf against 12. Seren's wolf snarled inside her, and this time, she listened. The shift came easier than before, faster and more natural. She launched herself at the nearest guard, her jaws closing around his sword arm before he could bring it down on Riven's exposed back. They fought together, moving in sync as if they'd trained for years. Seren was smaller, faster, using her speed to distract and disable. Riven was power and precision, cutting through the guards with lethal efficiency. Within minutes, it was over. Bodies littered the vault floor. Aldrich stood alone, his confident sneer replaced by something approaching fear. You can't kill me, he said quickly. If I die, my allies will know. The war will start anyway. Crimson Claw has been dealt with. A new voice echoed from behind him. Seren looked up to see Coralie stepping through the vault door, flanked by wolves wearing unfamiliar colors. Sister? Seren shifted back, staring in disbelief. What are you? I've been in contact with Alpha Riven's people for months. Coralie said quietly. After you left, I found Father's journals. I saw what he was planning, not just for Thornwood, but for our entire territory. The slavery deals, the poison experiments, the murders. Her voice cracked. He killed our mother, Seren. Not just your birth mother. Ours too. She found out what he was doing and threatened to expose him, so She couldn't finish. Aldrich's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful bitch. Everything I did was for this family. You did nothing for this family. Coralie's voice was ice. You did everything for yourself, for your pride, for your twisted need for control. She looked at Seren. I'm sorry. For all the years I believed him, for all the ways I hurt you. I was wrong. About everything. Seren's throat tightened. Coralie. The neutral packs have already received copies of the evidence, Coralie continued. Ashford and Blackwater have withdrawn their alliance, and Crimson Claw's leadership was arrested 3 days ago by the Mountain Territories Council. Father has nothing left. Aldrich's face went white. That's not possible. I was careful. You were arrogant. Riven stepped forward, his blade still dripping. You thought you were the smartest person in every room. You thought no one could outmaneuver you. But you made one critical mistake. What mistake? Riven smiled, cold and satisfied. You underestimated her. His eyes met Seren's, and she understood. Everything. The claiming, the partnership, the trust he'd built. It hadn't just been about saving himself. It had been about giving her the power to save everyone. Aldrich lunged for a fallen sword, but Riven was faster. His blade caught the older man's wrist, sending the weapon clattering across the stone floor. Aldrich Vane, Riven announced, his voice carrying the weight of a formal judgment. You are charged with conspiracy to commit genocide, illegal alliance with slavery operations, murder of Blood Moon wolves, attempted assassination of an Alpha King, and treason against the Wolf Councils. How do you plead? Aldrich spat at his feet. I plead that you're a dead man walking. The curse will take you eventually. It always does. The curse is broken. Seren stepped forward, standing beside Riven. I broke it, and now I'm going to watch you pay for everything you've done. For the first time, real fear flickered in Aldrich's eyes. That's impossible. Blood Moon healing requires love. Seren met his gaze without flinching. Something you've never understood and never will. The trial took 3 days. Representatives from every major pack territory gathered in Thornwood Keep to hear the evidence. Documents were presented. Witnesses testified. Coralie spoke for hours, detailing everything she'd discovered in her father's private chambers. And when it was over, the verdict was unanimous. Aldrich Vane was sentenced to death. The execution was scheduled for the following dawn, but Seren asked for one final meeting. She needed to understand, needed to look into the eyes of the man who'd made her life a misery and find some explanation for his cruelty. The dungeon was cold and dark. Aldrich sat in chains, his fine clothes replaced by prisoners' rags. He looked older somehow, diminished, as if the loss of power had physically aged him. Come to gloat? He asked when she entered. No? Seren sat on a bench across from his cell. I came to ask why. Why what? Why you hated me so much. I understand about my mother. You felt betrayed, cuckolded. But I was just a child. I didn't choose to be born. Aldrich laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. You think this was about the affair? The affair was nothing. A convenient excuse. Then what was it about? He leaned forward, chains rattling. Power. It's always been about power. Blood Moon wolves were the greatest threat to packs like ours for centuries. Their healing abilities, their connection to ancient magic, it made them untouchable. My grandfather dedicated his life to destroying them. My father continued the work, and I was supposed to finish it. By killing them all. By absorbing their power. His eyes glinted with something like madness. Blood moon blood can be harvested, processed, concentrated. The experiments in my journals? They were working. I was months away from creating a serum that would give any wolf blood moon abilities. Saren felt sick. You were going to turn yourself into a blood moon wolf. I was going to become a god. Aldrich's voice rose. Immortal. Unstoppable. The most powerful alpha who ever lived. And then you happened. You, with your defective wolf and your pathetic weakness. You tainted the bloodline I'd been cultivating for decades. You kept me alive because you thought you could use my blood for your experiments. Obviously, but your blood was wrong somehow. Incomplete. Nothing I extracted from you ever worked properly. He sneered. You ruined everything just by existing. Just like your whore of a mother. Seren stood slowly. She'd wanted understanding, but she realized now that there was none to be found. Aldrich wasn't complicated or tragic. He was simply empty. A hollow man who'd filled the void inside himself with hatred and ambition. You're pathetic, she said quietly. You had a family. You had power. You had everything most people only dream of, and you threw it all away for an impossible fantasy. I would have succeeded. You would have failed. Seren moved toward the cell door. Because you never understood the one thing that makes blood moon power work. It's not about blood or breeding or experiments. It's about connection. It's about love. And you've never been capable of either. She turned to leave. Wait. Aldrich's voice stopped her. There's something you don't know. Something I never told anyone. Seren paused but didn't turn around. Your mother, Lysara, she didn't just happen to cross my path. I sought her out. I tracked her for years. And when I finally found her, she came willingly. Do you know why? Seren's hands clenched at her sides. Tell me. Because I promised to protect you. She was already pregnant when I found her. She'd had a vision, a prophecy, that her child would be the one to restore the blood moon line to power. She traded herself for the promise that I'd let you live. The words hit Seren like a physical blow. She died for me, she whispered. She was a fool. Aldrich's voice was dismissive. Just like you. Just like everyone who believes love is stronger than power. Seren finally turned, meeting his eyes one last time. My mother was braver than you'll ever understand. And her sacrifice wasn't wasted. The blood moon line isn't ending with me. It's beginning again. She placed her hand on her stomach. A gesture that Aldrich couldn't possibly understand, but that she'd known with certainty since the night in the vault. New life, new hope. A future her mother had seen and died to protect. Goodbye, Aldrich, Seren said. I won't be attending your execution. You're not worth any more of my time. She walked out of the dungeon and into the morning light, where Riven was waiting. Are you all right? He asked, taking her hands. I will be. She leaned into him, feeling his warmth surround her. I have something to tell you. Something wonderful. 6 months later, the great hall of Thornwood Keep was transformed. Gone were the dark tapestries and flickering shadows. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been enlarged, illuminating walls now decorated with silver and gold. The black marble throne had been replaced with one carved from pale wood, its armrests shaped like running wolves. And on that throne sat Seren, her hand resting on the visible swell of her belly, watching as wolves from a dozen territories gathered to witness something that hadn't happened in centuries. The restoration of the blood moon line. Riven stood beside her, no longer cold, no longer cursed. In the months since that night in the vault, he'd changed in ways both small and profound. He smiled more often. He laughed. He spent hours talking to his people, learning their names and their stories, becoming the kind of alpha his pack had always deserved. "Are you nervous?" he asked softly. "Terrified," Seren admitted. "But the good kind of terrified." He squeezed her hand. "You'll be magnificent. You always are." The ceremony began with the ancient words, spoken by the oldest wolf in attendance, a woman who claimed to remember the last blood moon queen, though that seemed impossible given the timeline. "We gather today to witness the return of what was lost," the elder intoned. "The healing blood, the sacred bond, the power that exists not to dominate, but to protect." Seren rose from the throne, Riven helping her navigate the stairs with her growing belly. She stood before the gathered wolves, her silver gown catching the light. "For generations," she said, her voice carrying across the silent hall, "the blood moon wolves were hunted, feared, destroyed. Those who sought power saw us as threats to be eliminated. They didn't understand that our power was never meant for conquest. It was meant for this, for connection, for healing, for love." She looked at Riven, then at Coralie, who stood among the witnesses with tears streaming down her face. "I stand before you today as the last daughter of the Blood Moon line, but I won't be the last for long." She placed her hand on her stomach. "The next generation is already coming, and they will grow up in a world where Blood Moon wolves are honored, not hunted, where their gifts are celebrated, not feared." The hall erupted in cheers. Later, after the ceremony had ended and the guests had dispersed, Seren stood at the window of the chamber that had once belonged to Riven's mother. The same chamber where she'd spent her first night in Thornwood, terrified and alone. So much had changed since then. Riven came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "Everything." She leaned back against him. "That first night, I thought I was going to die here. I thought I was a sacrifice. I never imagined that you'd become queen, that I'd become anything." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I spent my whole life believing I was worthless, broken, unwanted. And then you chose me. Before you knew anything about my blood or my heritage, you chose me." "I chose my mate," Riven said simply. "I chose the woman my wolf recognized before my mind could catch up. And I would choose you again, in every lifetime, in every world." Seren rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I love you," she murmured against his lips. "I love you too." He pulled back slightly, his eyes dancing with warmth that still surprised her every time she saw it. "Both of you." His hand joined hers on her stomach, and they stood together in the fading light, watching the sun set over their territory, their home, their future. In the distance, wolves began to howl, not in warning or challenge, but in celebration. The sound echoed across the forest, carrying with it a message that would reach every pack in the region. The midnight wolf had found his mate. The Blood Moon Queen had come home, and their story was only beginning. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear more like it, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. I read every single comment, and your support means more than you know. What did you think of Seren and Riven's story? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time.